Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Thanks as always to my new subscribers. Had quite a few new ones over the last 7 days, so hello to you all, thank you. Plenty more to come, as I always say, and indeed there is. The last 4 days have been incredibly frustrating. I was working for 3 of them, and because of the big storm Darragh, that's been passing over, I've been having to go to work in the van each day. This is the first day since I think Thursday when it would have been safe to go on the motorcycle, so I'm making the most of it. I've actually got 3 whole days off, starting tomorrow, and I'll certainly be making the most of those. Quite a bit to talk about on the way into work today, so let's get on the way. Well, it's a very crisp, mostly clear winter's day. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon and I'm heading for Ambleside. Not even slightly warm, it's probably about 2 or 3 degrees at this point, and so definitely a day for the heated gloves. I'm going to be taking the most direct route to Ambleside today. I don't actually have to be in work until 5 o'clock today. It's that difficult period in hospitality where people are saving up for Christmas, and so the place where I'm working just now has gone really quiet. There is absolutely no point in doing lunchtime service. So only 4 hours work. I will be having a decidedly chilly ride home at about 9:30 this evening. But do you know what? I don't care. The weather here has been really horrendous over the last few days. Very high winds. Nowhere near as bad as they were in North Wales, it seems. A friend of mine lives out not far from the coast in North Wales, and he was saying they were having 90-95 mile an hour gusts there. It was really quite horrendous. But here we had gusts of up to about 50-55 miles an hour. It's been very cold, it's been very wet. It's been very cold and it's been very wet. And as I say, also very windy. Any 2 of those conditions and I might ride. Cold and windy I don't mind. Windy and wet I kind of shy away from. But when you get to cold, wet and windy, I'm just going to work in the van. It's as simple as that. Which brings me on to my first topic of discussion today. One of my recent subscribers is a guy, fellow YouTuber called Swinglish Steve. The reason he's called that is because he lives in Sweden and he's English and his name is Steve. So the clue is in the name, really. Anyway, really enjoying his films, and he has recently put his motorcycle away for the winter. He's put it into storage for a period of time that could be up to 5 months, he says. And the film of his that I was watching just now before I left home, he was talking about periods in his life when he did ride all the way through winter. And he speaks of a time when he lived on the south coast of England in a place called Lewes, and he was working in New Haven. These are 2 places, 2 towns on the south coast that I know really quite well because I did a stint of living there myself some, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe now. And he said that in those days his only means of transport was his motorcycle. GPZ 305 is what he says. I think that was a belt driven one, wasn't it? I don't know, he'll tell me, I'm sure. and he was talking about having to ride through snowy, icy conditions on a motorcycle. Well, you know, I've done my fair share of winter riding, often because, for the same reason as Steve, there was no other way of getting where I needed to be getting. These days, of course, and just like him, life is a bit more comfortable, and I do have options. I can go in the car, I can go in the van, and I don't have to get soaking wet and freezing cold if I don't want to. Which isn't to say that I don't sometimes like getting freezing cold and soaking wet. And to quote Robert Persick from his book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, you know, physical discomfort, he says, is only important if the mood is wrong. If you're enjoying the ride, it really doesn't matter that it's not that comfortable. Particularly when you know that when you get home, there's going to be a nice hot bath waiting for you. Which indeed there will be tonight at about 10:30. So given that the winter conditions in Sweden are a hell of a lot worse than they are here, I can fully understand him putting his bike into hibernation. For my part, I'm going to ride every day that it's safe to do so throughout the winter. So yeah, check out his films, Swenglish Steve, well worth a watch, and all part of the process started by Slobo Lobo, who suggested quite recently that we smaller channels ought to be supporting each other more, and that is indeed what several of us are doing. If you find yourself in that position, join the crew. One of the YouTubers that I discovered through Slobo Lobo's small channel initiative is a guy called Beans on Toast. Now, here's the thing. I was already familiar with his music. He's got a lot of stuff on Spotify, and he plays guitar and sings kind of comedy songs, I guess you would call them. Some of them aren't so funny, particularly the one where he suggests that Jeremy Corbyn is a superior leader than Theresa May was. Absolute nonsense, mate. They're all the bloody same. And it doesn't matter what they say and how they behave when they're not in power. When they get into power, they're all the bloody same. Every last one of them. If I was in power, I'd be the bloody same, which is why I don't seek election. Anyway, it was a joy to discover that he also does moto vlogging videos. Well, I had no idea. And there was one of his that I was watching again this morning. Or was it last night? I forget. Doesn't matter. Where he's filtering through central London. And one of them in particular really stood out. He's going around Hyde Park Corner and he's just tearing it up. Really, really exciting. And it cast my mind back to the days in the early 90s when I was a motorcycle courier in London, and went round Hyde Park Corner many, many, many times, often many times in a single day. So yeah, that brought back some very fond memories. And then there's Slobo Lobo, the man himself. Now, in one of his recent films, he raised an interesting question. He caught himself singing in his helmet, as he does, a Gary Glitter song. And he then immediately asked himself the question, is it still okay to be singing Gary Glitter songs, given that the man has had a fall from grace? Well, I'm fairly clear about that. As a music aficionado, I mean, music is an enormous part of my life. If I were to pay any attention to the character and behaviours of some of the people whose music I really, really enjoy and admire, well, I'd never have a lot to listen to, would I? You know. But here's the thing. Now, not many of you will know this, but I spent quite a bit of time at university in my mid-30s, and I was studying, amongst other things, history and English. And one of the modules that I studied in the English part of the course was reader theory. Now, there are all kinds of different reading theories, but largely what resonated with me most was the idea that when somebody creates a piece of work, be it a piece of music, a novel, a poem, whatever, but a work of art if you like, then the moment that that piece of work goes into the public domain, it becomes, to all intents and purposes, no longer about the artists themselves, but rather about the art. Now, that makes it a separate thing. Lou Reed, for example, by all accounts, was not the most pleasant of people, and yet I could not be without his music. It formed and continues to form an integral part of the fabric of my life. I might not have wanted to sit and have a beer with Lou Reed, and I'm not certain there would have been a huge amount that we would agree on, apart from perhaps some of the darker sentiments in his work. But just because he was an asshole doesn't mean that I shouldn't be listening to his music. So yeah, that's what I think about that. The artist is separated from the art, and it's not just in music and poetry and art, it's in any walk of life. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the work of Karl Marx, as you'll know if you've watched more than a few of my videos. But when we look at biographical accounts of Marx's life, there are quite a number of question marks over some of his behaviour, particularly the treatment of his wife, Jenny. Does that in any way discredit the work that he did in explaining how capitalism works? Well, I don't think so. And again, while I might not necessarily want to be sitting down having a beer with old Karl, and I certainly wouldn't be wanting to have a game of chess with him because he was apparently a very bad loser, that does not and should not prevent me from appreciating his contribution to our understanding of the way the world is and why it's the way it is and what we can do about it. So there we go, those are just my thoughts. These are not things that I would necessarily have been speaking about in my helmet, were it not for the Slowbo initiative. So there we go, cheers mate, let's keep it going.